It's time to move on. It's time to get ready on a short work week to fix a lot of stuff over at One Bills Drive with the Buccaneers coming in on Thursday Night Football. And it's time to stop thinking and start podcasting. I'm Kevin Carroll. Welcome to the Buffalo End Zone Podcast. I don't think that much anyways.
My name's Jon Scott, and of the many things that Josh Allen and I do not share, he mentioned today he feels he performs at his best when he's in a mental state he referred to as low positive. Kevin, I think you and I can agree I perpetually perform this job in a mental state of high negative.
Yes, and rage, and anger, and you like to scare everybody. But yeah.
Roar.
Hey, there's a good reason, John, for all this surrounding the Bills right now with the way they've been performing. And when we last left, of course, there was that ugly performance in New England, John. And now we have the short week. So much to fix with this Bills team. Aspirations are still high. Wouldn't jump off the bandwagon if I was any Bills Mafia person who apparently they don't really like me, but we'll get into that a little bit later. But, yeah, it is. It is. It's time to move on. The NFL's a week-to-week league, John. You saw the Eagles shut down the Dolphins. You see teams that should win not winning. It just seems like this is the NFL this season. But for the Bills, you got to do you and not pay attention to what's going on around the rest of the league and just accept it. They should be doing a lot better than they are, and they can be doing a lot better than they are.
It's a weird dynamic, and we had the conversation fairly immediately after the stunning loss to the New England Patriots on Sunday. The past couple days, heard from the coordinator, Sean McDermott, Eric Washington, kind of a de facto defensive mouthpiece of sorts towards the media. Hear from the players, Josh Allen, Von Miller, others, to try to get some sort of understanding of what's the direction they're going to go in here to try to right these wrongs. And the conversation, a week or so, 2+ weeks ago, was strictly on the offense. And then the defense stubbed their toe and did not look the same strong unit that they had up to that point before the New England game. So it seems like everybody's kind of on watch.
Tyler Bass, too.
Yeah, and I spoke with him today as well about that. Here's the interesting thing. It appears Sean McDermott's message was we all have to stick together and all of that, but he said something at the very end of his press conference on Tuesday that I thought was really interesting. It was, we've been here before. We've had adversity. This is what we do. We've proven we know how to win. We've proven that we know how to develop players. We know how to right to the ship when things aren't going well. So that's why we believe that this is no different. Obviously, everyone to a man over there wants things to be easy, wants it to work, wants it to flow. We understand there are ebbs and flows of a season. This is, 3 weeks, I think, where they just haven't played up to par. And so now it's once again on a short week. Let's see all of the words that are coming out of your mouth ultimately play out to a different result and different level of play on the field against the Bucs Thursday night.
It's a fine line, John, to walk to say we've been through the. Of course, each year, every team is different. Every season is different. Looking too much on, 2 years ago, the Bills went through something like this, and they ended up in the AFC Championship. A few years ago, they went through something like this. They ended up with that amazing game against the Chiefs in the playoffs. But now, hitting a lull in a season and becoming part of your identity of who you are, 3 games with 0 offense in the first half could just start becoming a trend because, as you said, if you don't do something to fix that, like you pointed out, when they get to the second half, when they change the pace of play, when they start approaching it different because now you're in, we're way behind, or maybe not way behind, but we're behind. We got to start coming back. They can do it. We've seen them do it now twice in a row almost three times in a row. Once they ended up winning, but you see that they're able to do it on offense. So what the heck's wrong with just starting games that way?
A lot of interesting kind of nuggets that you can choose however way you want to read the tea leaves for. One is, how much is Sean McDermott involved with the offense? We understand he's assumed the play calling duties on the defense, and that's taken over some of his time, but Ken Dorsey divulging a little bit of how there's a philosophy and way that Sean kind of envisions the offense to go, so it's as much Ken Dorsey doing things, but a little bit of what Sean McDermott wants. And I know a lot of people in the past have thought, oh, McDermott's a defensive guy. He wants them to run the ball more and be more of a controlling.
Okay, that's what I was going to ask you, is the philosophy of a balanced attack, running the ball more. I don't want to read into things, but body language and stuff, watching Ken Dorsey, even if you had the sound down, just kind of watching him during the early press conference early in the week, is there a feeling that maybe Dorsey wants to do other things and he's only a second-year offensive coordinator? Head coach Sean McDermott is saying no. Or maybe not no, but maybe I get what you're doing, but let's do it more this way.
There is a potential, and we don't know this. It would be completely guessing.
Irresponsible.
Right. When we're not saying this, but it is possible that maybe Ken Dorsey is adhering a little bit more to the overall vision and philosophy of what Sean McDermott would like to see from the offense, which, to some extent, as the head coach, he is allowed to do that to some extent. We understand, and again, I do not know this, so I'm not saying this is the case, but there were rumors out there that there was some friction between Sean McDermott and Brian Daboll, and maybe they didn't necessarily agree with everything with each other. I always took it as, when you're together that long, you have that quarterback, this talent, and you don't reach the ultimate goal, the pressure builds and builds and builds, and when things aren't working great, that's when, in any facet of life, really, even the closest people, there could be friction and disagreement. So that's kind of how I looked at it, but maybe it could be something. Daboll had a vision for the offense. Sean wanted to kind of shift a certain way, and that kind of affected the relationship in some capacity. Dave's would have got the head coaching job anyways. It wouldn't have really mattered. But maybe Dorsey is more of a guy who's saying, hey, you want us to be more balanced and establish the running game a little bit more? All right, let's try it.
That's the way I kind of am starting to look at this. Is Daboll comes in established. He's part of the growth of the team. He leaves. You have a guy who's first-year offensive coordinator, now second-year offensive coordinator. You know, maybe it was, I'm going to have, if you're Sean McDermott, I'm going to have a little more control because of where Ken Dorsey is in his development as a play caller in his career. But, I mean, McDermott obviously has his hands full now running the defense, so you hear him say he trusts his guys and he doesn't want to micromanage his coaches and coordinators. But I don't know. It seems like the more balance the team got, the less effective they've been.
Which makes sense to me. Remember the conversations that's been around for years, and it's fueled by the national people who, whenever the sniff of a running back of high caliber is rumored to be on the open market, they're always linked to the Bills because the Bills need a running back. They need McCaffrey, which, let's be true, the way he looks in San Francisco, he would absolutely help this team. But they need Alvin Kamara. They need Dalvin Cook. They need Derrick Henry. They need all these people. I don't think they do. My thing was always, do you want to take the ball out of Josh Allen's hands in favor of running the football? And there's a lot of factors that go into running the football, like the offensive line. It wasn't always Devin Singletary wasn't ripping off 5 to 10 yard runs because of Devin Singletary. or Zach Moss wasn't doing that. It was also because there weren't holes particularly to get through. Here's the one thing with the McDermott and the dynamic of what he wants that kind of goes counter. He acknowledged today that he feels Sean McDermott feels that Josh Allen performs at his best when things are up-tempo. That is something I've been clamoring for them to do more of. You saw it play out very well when they were down 2 scores against New England. Boom, they scored in 2 minutes because they were forced into an up-tempo situation. Later in the Jacksonville game, when the offense was stagnant, they're forced to a position where they have to move quick, and they roll down the field. It's something that Brian Daboll would do that I even wanted to see maybe a little bit more when he was the offensive coordinator because it was always so successful. I recognize you're not going the whole game. Hurry up.
Right.
But I think maybe starting faster is the best way to ignite that rhythm and execution to best get these guys in a flow. And Deion Dawkins mentioned it today as well. He said he compares it to a basketball player. You come into the game and you're ripping 3 shots in a row and they all go down nothing but net. That sets a tone for the game where your confidence is at a different level and you just carry yourself differently and play better. Does that mean everything's going to be great because you made your first 3 shots? No, but you're just in a better spot. You take it to the football side of things. We heard last week a lot about just getting that first down, things like that. Get positive plays, stay on schedule, get some movement, and even if it doesn't result in a touchdown, you pick up a few first downs at an opening drive, even if it ends up still in a punt, you feel better. Oh, they're moving the football. Maybe we just misexecuted on this one play. It seems, whether they're tempo or not, they get a positive play, and then it's 2nd and 4, and they're handing it off.
Exactly.
Or they get a positive play, and then they throw it again, and you maybe get that first down, 2-3 plays, then a penalty, or then a misfire, or then you're running it up the middle out of the shotgun or something like that, and then you still find yourself back in that same 3rd and 3, 3rd and 7, 3rd and 8, and all that positive momentum is nullified by maybe just one poor decision, whether it be a play call or an execution from them. That's where I think they just collectively, with the tempo, is what I would like to see Thursday night. It's also a short week. Guys, maybe it's a little different feel for them physically. Just come on out there. Keep it simple is another thing we've heard a lot of. Keep it simple. Guys can play free, and maybe that can be something that can kind of get the wheels back on the track for the Bills.
And Tampa Bay's defense is pretty good, so it would be good to get that tempo going. I think early in the game, right off the bat, like you said, when the post-game show we had Fred Jackson on, I can't remember if you were with us yet, but Fred and I were talking about what that does and how that handcuffs the defense on the other side, unable to make checks, unable to fix things when you get up to the line. It just gives the offense that big enough of an advantage that you will be able to, if you're penalties got to stop too, but if you're executing properly, you're able to just chunk after chunk after chunk and work your way down the field. And we've seen it before, like, who was it? Chip Kelly in Oregon used to do that really quick offense. We've seen, Peyton Manning run offense like that, Dan Marino, Tom Brady. Like, when you need to do it, and I think in this particular scenario, with how you've started the last 3 games, this is it. Because the Bucs are on a short week, too. You guys have the advantage on offense. Take advantage of that.
The Bills have done it, obviously. Patrick Mahomes, the Eagles, the Miami Dolphins. It's a product of when you feel comfortable with your quarterback and the weapons and the unit as a whole.
Which the Bills should.
And have shown that they can do that. I think it's a good thing. And again, McDermott has said over the past week, 2 weeks, when the conversation has grown about the offensive struggles, is he says he feels they need to lean into more of what they do best. What are their strengths? And then today he says he feels that one of the strongest parts of Josh Allen's game is how he performs up-tempo. To me, that directly says play more up-tempo. That makes sense. And it's funny because I put out that quote on Twitter, and the responses from fans, every one of them is, duh, no kidding.
No.
Then why don't you do it? Why don't you do it? And we always say this, and at least I do, we're not smarter than the people inside the Bills building. But
Right.
sometimes things are just so obvious that people like you and I and the fans and people listening to this podcast or watching, we see it so plainly that don't overthink it. Just because you are a great football mind doesn't mean you need to overthink things. And maybe that's where some of this has come of, well, we got to stay balanced. We got to keep them off base and not just think that. Remember when Dave's came out and threw like 17 straight passes to start a game, I think
like
against
that.
the Giants and things like that. It doesn't have to be like that. But I just feel like go back to what was working against Vegas and certainly the Dolphins, and maybe even a year ago early in the season, because a lot of the pieces are the same. That's what's also so peculiar to me. Yeah, Trent Sherfield's new, and Deontay Hardy's new, and Dalton Kincaid's new, but Kincaid has been out a game, and Sherfield doesn't play much, and Hardy hasn't been overly involved. I mean, the core of this team has been Josh Allen, Stephon Diggs, Gabe Davis, Dawson Knox prior to his injury, Deion Dawkins, Mitch Morse, Spencer Brown. Khalil Shakir, like these guys have been there when the offense was humming. Why all of a sudden would this execution become an issue or things are being too complex? I know new things are added, but it's the same people, the same core principles. To me, that's what makes it even more mind-boggling to say it's not a new scheme, it's not new players, it's the same cast of characters and script. And for some reason like that, after the Miami drubbing, it's almost like they completely forgot what they were doing.
Yeah. And you bring up Dalton Kincaid because now with Knox, like you mentioned, having wrist surgery, coming off his best game of the season, I want to say for sure will be more involved. But after what I've seen the last few weeks, I'm going to hold off on saying for sure will be more involved. But it'll be interesting to see because of Josh's relationship with Dawson Knox. I think, if it's not Stephon Diggs, he leaned on Dawson Knox on big plays, like that fourth down play that Knox ultimately dropped. So it'll be interesting to see the dynamic. And we're still waiting. Up-tempo offense. Get the ball around and get it out quicker. Our buddy Andy Young, who works with us, he and I were talking today about just making a quicker decision and getting the ball to the open guy right away with this quick-paced offense.
I think the biggest thing that will come from the Dawson Knox injury is less 12 personnel. That was the big talking point when they made the selection of Kincaid, is now it's 12 personnel. They came out the gate week 1 against the Jets, and it was so heavy, 12 personnel. We saw a lot of it when both Knox and Kincaid were playing, when they were both healthy-ish and suiting up. That's what we saw a lot of. But maybe the Bills' best offense isn't 12 personnel. Maybe that's the one wrinkle that's different with this unit that hasn't really found its groove. And now, maybe you don't go 12 personnel. Maybe you'd use Kincaid, obviously, but maybe you go 3 wide receivers. Maybe you go more 4 wide receivers. Maybe you spread things out a little bit more, and maybe that caters back more to the Bills' offensive scheme and philosophy of old, and that's where the discussions we've had about getting Sherfield involved more, Deontay Hardy involved more, Khalil Shakir more involved. Maybe it'll just be forced because of the Knox injury, and that will be a product that can also help get the Bills' offense on track. I will add one note. Did speak with Reggie Gilliam today because Quentin Morris back to
ankle injury?
Yes.
Yeah.
So he missed last week, has not participated as we taped this Monday walkthrough or the Tuesday practice. They have a walkthrough on Wednesday. I would say at this point, unlikely Quentin Morris plays. So Reggie Gilliam told me he's going to see more run as more of a tight end. So I don't think it's going to be Dalton Kincaid and Reggie Gilliam 12 personnel 50% of the time. But I also don't think it means they're going to have to completely abandon it. And maybe Gilliam, with his diversified skill set, can also be a little different look for what the Bills offense can do.
I'm kind of mad that I didn't think about what you're talking about right now, because it makes total sense. Like, you correct me if I'm wrong, but weren't there games over the last couple of years where Dawson Knox was the only tight end really in the lineup with Gilliam, a fullback, could come in, but they basically just went Dawson Knox the entire time? And while you were talking about that, I'm like, that is the Bills' offense right there. That is Diggs and Davis on the outside, slot guy in the middle to get, that yardage in the middle that you need to get to. And Dawson Knox was doing his thing, but now that would be Dalton Kincaid. And there you have now, not forced, well, we went out and drafted a tight end, so we're going to run 2 tight ends. Whether we like it or not, whether it's working or not. So you never want to say an injury is a good thing, but it might be good to see what this offense actually looks like without 2 tight ends out on the field.
And the one thing that I don't want to say complicates, and I'm not going to say a pitfall, because losing Dawson Knox just in general, I know people get frustrated with some of his inconsistencies, but I think that wrist injury was bothering him more than we knew. Mm-hmm. And Sean McDermott said so, where medically things did not get worse playing in Sunday's game. It's been something he's been dealing with for weeks. They just felt that it was actually affecting him to the point where he needed to get surgery. So maybe those tougher catches against the Giants and late in the Patriots game were things that maybe he makes if it's, 1, a better throw, right, and 2, if he's more healthy. But what Dawson Knox does, I'm not going to say it in past tense, but what he does well is he's a good blocker. Like he's almost to the point where he said going into the Patriots game, he wanted to be more involved in the passing game because he didn't want to simply be a blocking guy and let Kincaid run he didn't mention Kincaid by name, but just he's the blocker in 12 personnel and Kincaid runs the routes. Can Kincaid hold up with that aspect of being the number 1 tight end on this team? Because in the draft process, his blocking was something that was looked at in the cons type category of things he needed to work on. Also, his strength is a pass catcher. And that's what I liked about at least how the Bills were using him was don't try to make him something he's not. He can develop as a blocker, but out the gate, just use him as a pass-catching tight end. Now he's going to be thrust into that role, which then also makes me wonder, especially if Quentin Morris is out, if they try to find someone else or they just spread it out more. I mean, you can't just not have him be a blocker. But if Quentin Morris is healthy, you might see Quentin Morris in there more for the blocking responsibilities and Kincaid maybe a rotation.
You said find someone else. I got excited. I thought we were going to talk about Rob Gronkowski.
Bring it out, Kevin. Continue to stir the pot.
John, I pitched this idea, and I would say 90% of Bills Mafia hates it. And again, this would not be an immediate solution. But when you look at the tight end room, I've never had wrist surgery, John. I don't know how long that's going to take. I know McDermott didn't give a timetable, but to me, it seems like if you have work done to your wrists, it's not something where you're coming back anytime soon. So I floated the idea out there. Hear me out. Rob Gronkowski is out there. I get that he's retired. I get that he's probably past his prime. Not asking bring him in to be your stud tight end. But, he has mentioned before that the Bills had shown interest in him and he's toyed with it. But he wanted to stay retired, and it looks like he's comfortable then. But I just think it's an interesting idea with how young Dalton Kincaid is and the experience Gronkowski can bring just to the locker room to kind of help him along. I threw the idea out there, and I'm not saying it's the greatest idea I've ever had, but holy smokes, did Bills Mafia light me up on this one, John.
Welcome to the party, pal.
I know, I usually just mind my own business. Go sit in a corner with a dunce cap on. You know, you have some people better than anything we have right now. He's old, in which I point out he's Travis Kelce's age. They're both 34. So if you still think Travis Kelce, and we'll touch a little bit on Travis Kelce later on, but at 34 years old, and Gronk has come out of retirement before, he's a Western New York guy, yada, 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 maybe gives a discount to the Bills, maybe just wants to see what it's like. I just didn't think that it would hurt. Apparently it hurt people's feelings that I would actually bring him up. One person actually told me because of what he did to Trey White years ago, he could never don a Bills uniform because that would be a disgrace.
I feel like that has been talked about since. I don't really think there's anything there
Right.
after that. I don't think it's stupid. I would not go that far.
That's all I want. All I strive for is to not be stupid.
I don't know how much value it would. I certainly don't think it's realistic. Maybe a year removed, but now at this point, after he's been retired a couple years, I just don't see it. I know you found the thing where he said, I think it was somewhat in the early going of his second retirement, how he mentioned he's a Bills fan and he's more open about his fandom and growing up, certainly that he wasn't when he was a member of the New England Patriots. Right. I get the thought, but I think they are going to have to bring in a body at some point. And if they don't, going back to what you said earlier, in recent years, they've rolled with just 2 tight ends.
Yeah.
And so this, again, may just illustrate and take us to a path that says, all right, we're not going to force 12 personnel. We're not going to lean into the tight end position if we don't feel we have the horses in that group. So instead, we're going to spread it out a little more and just go through the wide receivers. And again, you never wish injury upon anyone. Dawson's a great guy, and I think he is a valuable player to this offense for the things that he can do, things that he can do. But maybe timing-wise, it just may be something that the Bills needed to be forced into to go more with 3-4 wide receiver sets to find their identity again of the type of offense they're best.
Nothing is a coincidence, John. And I'll also just throw in, just because I bang this drum, James Cook, you brought him in because he's a good pass catcher. All training camp long, we saw him split out wide. We've seen them do it a few times, but there's another option for you there as well that I think you should be taking more advantage of.
I agree. And just a housekeeping note, Sean McDermott was asked on Tuesday whether or not Damian Harris, in his mind, would be ready to come off and play when IR is up after 4 weeks. Last week was his first week, so he's now entering his second week, and he said at this point he doesn't know. Mm-hmm. So if you're looking at the running back room, it's currently James Cook, Latavius Murray, and Ty Johnson. It was a lot of Cook and Murray, and that was it. It was actually I forget the snap counts. I don't think it was 50-50, but it was a little more of an even split than I anticipated.
I think I noticed that too.
And that's just kind of, I think, between Cook being young, and he's always been a guy in a timeshare. But if as much as we thought and feel Latavius Murray has been a good boost, I kind of liked him as a boost as that third guy rather than necessarily maybe the boost as the number 2. But if they're not running it as much, and we seem to think they shouldn't, then who cares?
Hey, Fred Jackson thinks Latavius Murray screwed up big time on that callback touchdown.
But this is what
Fred Jackson said this. I guarantee you I wouldn't have done that because I'm smarter than that to do what he did.
Here's the thing. It's on the player. I think that's on Ken Dorsey. Why in the heck are you splitting Latavius Murray out wide?
Well, there's that too.
Like, if anything, I'd put James Cook in that situation because at least one, don't you think as a defense, and Bill Belichick of all people is looking like, yeah, right, Latavius Murray's going to be a factor in this? No, and he's just not he's a very solid, had a great career. That's not his forte. You talk about putting your players in the best position to succeed. putting out Latavius Murray out wide in the slot to try to be the pick play guy, I think that was a poor personnel package for Ken Dorsey to put out there.
Fred tells me this, and I like the inside football stuff from former players, that the read is if his back isn't to you, you just stop running and turn like you're going to catch the ball and let him come into you. But if he's facing you, you keep running and run right into him. So when Peppers or whoever had their back to Murray, he should have stopped the route and let Knox come through and maybe Peppers just run into him standing there. So it was the fact that he kept moving towards the defender.
Right. And I know they go over that, but he's a running back that's not a pass catcher. I feel like, yes, at the end of the day, should he know it? But if we're preaching and the job of the coaching staff is to put each player in the best position to succeed and cater to their strengths, I feel in that singular instance, you were not doing Latavius Murray any favors by putting him in that position.
Yeah, right. You're right with that. I just wanted to tell that story. So there you go. That's my Fred Jackson route running story. The defense, John, I think the injuries are starting to catch up to them. I think the inexperience are starting to catch up to them. Bernard, I'm not going to he's the deal right there, but I think in certain areas it's just you'd be foolish to think with the injuries that the Bills sustained that they'd still have that same defense, and you were probably good the rest of the Jaguars game, the Giants game, facing Tyrod Taylor in a really bad Giants offense. But even a really bad, to that date, Patriots offense started to show some cracks in what the Bills have out there right now, and probably a concern where we are right now with the defense.
I want to give Dorian Williams a lot of credit because he's a young player, a rookie third-round pick, who's played in 3 games, was inserted in the Jacksonville game to replace Matt Milano since he was injured. In 2 of those 3 games, he's been benched. And the way Sean McDermott's explained it, and Eric Washington as well, he said for a young player, sometimes they just kind of need a reset. They kind of need to sit him down, allow him to breathe, because they're giving up some plays. And Dorian, I know he didn't want to, but I asked him if he would be willing to talk in the locker room, and he was. He didn't want to, but he did, and he faced it. And he said, I'm learning. The coaching staff is telling me just to continue to believe. They have faith in me. And he said the biggest thing is reading his keys. So reading the play and understanding, and it's funny because it's such coach speak, but it's this 1/11th that he's maybe over pursuing, or he's not staying within himself and what his job is to do. And because of that, he's in the wrong position, and it's allowing for some chunk plays by the opposing offense. He handled it, and I think as a young player to face that, struggles early in his career is super impressive from a personal standpoint, a personality standpoint, a character standpoint. Micah Hyde saying it happened to him in Green Bay when he was a rookie. He kind of got thrust into action, and there were moments he got hooked. And it's tough, but we obviously see how Micah Hyde's career turned out. And the curious thing now is how did the Bills handle the outside linebacker spot as they try to navigate remaining confident in Dorian Williams, understanding maybe the upside that he has from a physical standpoint and talent, while also just they got to have a guy they can trust in there, and that appears to be what Tyrell Dodson is. I don't think Dorian Williams is going away, but I don't know at this point on Tuesday night whether or not it's going to be Dorian Williams or Tyrell Dodson Thursday against the Bucs.
On the opposite end of the spectrum, and I bring this up just because it was a topic of conversation in the newsroom at one point. He's young. Is Jordan Poyer at a point where he's a detriment out there on the field because the consensus was he seems a step behind everybody right now when you look at the last couple of games.
I don't want to say he's a detriment. Maybe it's fair. I'm not watching Jordan Poyer all the time, so I can't rightfully say one way or the other if I can tell if he's lost a step or whatnot. I will just say this. I noticed it in New England, and maybe this is something a wrinkle Sean McDermott's going to do that kind of intertwines itself with the Dorian Williams outside linebacker conversation. They played 3 safeties. And I think sometimes that was they'd take Taryn off and maybe bring in Taylor Rapp. But in those scenarios, Rapp was deep. Micah was kind of the coverage guy. Jordan Poyer was in the box. And we saw Jordan Poyer get the sack against the Patriots. And maybe this is at least a package or a way to utilize Jordan's strengths, especially at this point in his career.
Mm-hmm.
He's awesome downhill. The dude still drops the hammer, and maybe this is not going to be their base. And I don't think you should expect or maybe should at all. Again, I'm not saying because I wouldn't say it because I don't think I have the educated knowledge of watching it to say that they would need to. But your safeties are going to be Micah Hyde and Jordan Poyer, barring an injury. But I think it's an interesting wrinkle that maybe they're going to use Poyer more in the box.
Yeah. That
also can play into maybe some deficiencies for what you're getting up from the outside guy.
Yeah, and the pass rush taking a beating too. The topic of Von Miller's playing time was a big to-do after the game. Monday, it came up a lot on if there was a setback maybe with his, I don't want to say recovery, but his getting back to full strength following the knee surgery less than a year ago. But it seems like from what you're hearing from the team, and I can only go off of what I'm hearing from McDermott and Miller and whatnot, that everything's actually fine. But I got a little confused, and I get confused easy, with McDermott talking about packages and needing his coaches to know where players need to be or when they needed to be in packages and stuff like that, that it kind of like it's Von Miller. You know? If he's dressed and you want Von Miller out there and you don't see him out there, you get Von Miller out there.
This is the information we have.
Yeah.
20 snaps against Jacksonville, or 27 and 20. Those are like the 2 games that he had upon returning. Then he had 6 against the Patriots this past Sunday. Part of that, I do believe, is because they were running it more. It was more of a ground and pound type thing, and especially at this stage in his ramp up, which is still happening, I think Shaq Lawson's a better run defender than Von Miller. So I think that's why maybe you saw Shaq Lawson in there. Here's the other information. Von Miller was placed on the Bills injury report for a walkthrough Monday and a normal practice on Tuesday, vet rest / knee, and he's been limited both days. So the fact that they have to put knee on the injury report says it's not nothing because he wasn't on there before. Do I think I don't think it's a setback. I simply just think, and Von said this even after the game, the guy had no ramp-up period that a traditional player has. Oh, by the way, it hasn't even been a year from his ACL injury, and he's 34 years old. This was it all the time. From the minute that the injury happened, it was managing expectations, which is what Sean McDermott said after the game. And now I'm interjecting my thoughts, so I don't want him to get confused. But manage the expectations of his age and the injury and the timeline that he's operating in on. You can use him in these smaller packages and smaller roles when Leonard Floyd, A.J. Epinesa, and Greg Rousseau are wreaking havoc and everybody else is. I think it's just more of a talking point because Von hasn't done anything for 3 weeks here since he's played, and this most recent game was the worst performance of the defensive front of the season. You can have the patience with Von getting to where Von needs to go and his ultimate vision, which is what he said since training camp started, I want to be at my best when the games matter the most. Well, when the Bills are 4-3 and the offense stinks and the defense is showing some holes, well, maybe you feel that Von, the games matter most now. So I think that's kind of where the conversation has heightened a bit, and the fact that you see him on the injury report. Do you want to see some more out of Von? Yeah. But I don't think it's I don't think the alarms need to be going off that loud at this point in time with him.
Yeah, it's still October, and Ed Oliver was out against the Patriots with his toe injury, but does it seem like he's kind of back on track to possibly playing Thursday night?
I would say so, just from the eye test. All the media saw on Tuesday is what I call a fast Friday. It's like 5 minutes. It's stretching. That's all we ever see. He was moving around great. I mean, he looked happy, looked in a good mindset, and I think the reason he didn't play Sunday was he wasn't right. Maybe he could have powered through it if it was the playoffs, but it's early in the season. Also, they were looking ahead and saying, well, if we played him on Sunday, that means maybe he couldn't go in the short turnaround on Thursday. And so I'm confident that Ed Oliver will play. I don't know about Jordan Phillips, who was also limited the past couple days with a back injury. These are things where the short week really amplifies the challenge of things. If you're dinged up or even just sore, if you're sore from a Sunday game, usually you have all week to get through the soreness and get your body right.
Mm-hmm.
These guys had Monday, which is usually a treatment day, which was a walkthrough. Then you have this. I mean, there's not a lot of time for them to get right. And it's not like Jordan Phillips is 25 anymore either. So I'm not as confident in Jordan Phillips. And the official injury report will come out Wednesday. So some of you may be listening to this after it's already come out. But we'll see.
Yeah, we'll find out. We can talk a little bit about the game coming up, John, and how the Bills play on a short week. I found it interesting just because I wasn't aware of it till I started scrolling through it. Josh Allen does well on a Thursday. Most of those, 3 of the last 4 years have been Thanksgiving games. And I bring that up because, like, why haven't I been home for Thanksgiving in a long time? It's on a Thursday. It's not on a Sunday. But, again, that's a win over Dallas when everything started rolling in the right direction. Win over the Saints, you lose Trey White. Win over the Lions last year. And because of the snow and when they played back-to-back games in Detroit, was that when Von Miller went down, or was it against the Browns?
No, it was against the Lions on Thanksgiving because it was back-to-back years. It was
That's right.
Trey came back Thanksgiving, and Von Miller was out Thanksgiving.
And then the COVID year, they didn't play on a Thursday night at all when things slid around. But so the track record is Josh Allen and company do well on a short week playing on a Thursday. So you get that. But now you have a Buccaneers team with Baker Mayfield at quarterback, John. And this looks like every other Baker Mayfield run team that has their points where they look good and they look like a contender, and then they look like not so much, but a solid defense for the Bills to contend with going into this one.
I will say what's very different with Baker Mayfield this time around, he's taking less sacks. 8 sacks is all that he has been taken down, some of the fewest in all of football, and he's only thrown 4 interceptions, which isn't great, but the turnovers are down. That's something that Baker struggled with when he was in Cleveland and even when he was with the Panthers as well. So he's getting the ball out quickly, and he's not under duress. It's a good offensive line. Sean McDermott said that. Even some of the defensive guys said it. So you want to try to force him into speeding things up. That's what you want to do with any quarterback. You've seen, though, when Baker in his career has been under more duress, that's where he becomes more the gunslinger who's willing to really drive it down the field. He's got some 2 really good veteran but really good wide receivers in Mike Evans and Chris Godwin, which might test these backup corners, not Benford because he's the starter, but that may test this secondary and the guys on the outside more than they've been tested to date, because I don't think you could say that, yeah, Calvin Ridley was good, and they had some Zay Jones. They have some good things out in Jacksonville, younger guys, but I think maybe the combination of Evans and Godwin is going to put it on Dane Jackson and Christian Benford maybe more than we've seen so far.
Yeah, I mean, other than the Dolphins, like when you look at the wide receivers that the Bills went up against, I mean, you have Devontae Adams with the Raiders, but, no real number two. I think this is
And they had Trey White.
Oh, that's right. That's right. They had Trey White till the end of that game. But you had Waddle and Hill, and now you have Godwin and Mike Evans.
Trey got hurt in the Miami game.
Yeah, that's what I said at the end of the Miami game.
But you talk about Devontae Adams.
No, I said Tyreek Hill. And did I say Devontae Adams?
You mean Jalen Waddle. But he didn't play in that game either. So
Wow. Not a perfect game for me today, but yes. And then on the defensive side of the ball, the Buccaneers defense is good, John. They're not allowing a lot of points so far this season. So you talk about a team that wants to get off to a quick start and get some points on the board. This is a pretty big test for the Bills.
Yeah, Vita Vea. They have a good Joe Tryon. They have a good defensive front. Shaq Barrett's over there. Levante David is older. I think you can get to him in terms of what he can do maybe in the passing game at the linebacker spot. It's a solid defense. It really is. And would you expect anything else from Todd Bowles? I mean, that's what his calling card is. So this one, as we transition into our predictions of the game, I got to take the Bills at what they've been, right?
Yeah.
And to me, I don't trust the offense against a stronger defense to give me confidence that they can push far enough ahead. And I think the offense is good. Do I think the Bills are going to lose? I'll get there. No, I don't. I'm not going to maybe go that route, but I think it's going to be a one-score game. I think it's going to be tight from start to finish.
Yeah, I'm totally on board with you on that. I'm going to skip the injuries, John. Weather, rain again.
Really?
Yeah. Or let me put it to you this way. That's what I saw our meteorologists have on their 7-day was rain with the Bills logo for Thursday night. Now, you can go to your phone and question our meteorologists.
I do. There's no rain in the forecast according to what I'm looking at.
Okay.
For this Thursday. I don't see rain in the forecast till Saturday and Sunday.
All right, well, we'll see ultimately at the end of the day. Bills from BetMGM -8.5, John. And after the last 3 weeks, give me a break. If you want to favor the Bills, 1.5, I would say at this point. 8.5 is just too steep for my blood.
Yeah, I'm not taking 8.5. I would take plus 8.5 for Tampa.
Yeah, absolutely. Over under 42.5. I'm taking the under in that too, mainly because Thursday night game and basically what we've seen from the Bills offense and what they're able to do, what the Bucs bring to the table on both offense and defense. I think it stays a rather low scoring game. I don't even want to pick the Bills. I got to be honest with you. But I don't know. You'd say something like Bills 21 and the Buccaneers 14 or something around that.
It's so funny because most of the time when the Bills get in these, everyone's talking so down on them. When they've been on this run, they seem to have this pop-off game of, oh, you guys thought we stunk.
Right.
This is what we are. But I don't believe it right now. I'm going to go 24-20. Bills win. But how confident do you even feel they could score 24 points? Isn't that insane to say?
I saw something on the Bills website today where they averaged 28 points on Thursday night games. I don't see this team getting to 28. from what we've seen recently, I just don't see it happening. So,
And I will just add this little tidbit in here because I have him scoring 24, which would mean a field goal. Also heard from Tyler Bass, another guy I'll give some credit to because he struggled. He's like, nothing is different. The mechanics, the operation with the snap and the hold, everything is the same. This just kind of happens. He said, I've missed him basically by a foot. He says, if I'm a foot or so left on all of these, we're not having this conversation. So he's not going to change anything. He's just going to stick to who he is, who was the AFC Special Teams Player of the Month in September because he didn't miss a kick at all.
Yep.
We'll see on Thursday night, but as we focus so much clearly on the offense, and now these defensive concerns have crept in after the New England game, you almost forget to talk about how Mr. Automatic Tyler Bass has been shaky as well. And for a team that's been clawing to try to get any points on the board, it's critical that he finds his mojo once again. So I predict he'll get one shot at getting the field goal.
All right.
Cobwebs and struggles away.
Start to right the ship. 3 and out before we go, John. And I was totally unaware of this. The World Series is about to start. When we're recording this on a Tuesday, all you have left is the NLCS between the Diamondbacks and the Phillies, John. Have you paid any attention to the baseball playoffs and were aware that the World Series is about to get underway, or did you even know we were in the ALCS and NLCS? Because I didn't even know the teams in it aside from the Philadelphia Phillies.
I am so sad that I've gotten so detached from baseball. It's so sad. It's my favorite sport. Even though I don't pay attention, it's largely because my favorite team, the Guardians, are blacked out. Different story for a different day. But I was aware. I tuned in and I watched some of the Houston, Texas game. Jonah Heim, an Amherst, New York guy right here in the Buffalo area, was an all-star this year, starting catcher for the all-star team.
Jeez.
And he's going to the World Series. And according to Mike Harrington, who wrote an article here in the Buffalo News, first position player from Western New York to play in the World Series since 1993, and I believe that was Dave Hollins from Orchard Park. So there's that local connection. And I have caught some of the Phillies-Arizona series as well. Torey Lovullo got a shout-out from Sean McDermott the other week. He's a big Bills guy because he was the Bison's manager for a brief period of time. I believe he's in the Buffalo Sports Hall of Fame.
You are correct.
So there's another local connection there. I know there's some Phillies fans as well. Bryce Harper, what he's been doing has been pretty cool. So maybe I'll get into it. Maybe I'll watch tonight, although my wife's home. We got some shows to catch up on, so probably not. But yes, long and short is I was aware of it. And you being, a Buffalo sports anchor, maybe you should know that a local kid's in the World Series.
Here's my problem. I've been given a new schedule, and I go to sleep at 8 o'clock every night. So I don't even know what's going on with what.
Well, you got to
Don't tell anyone.
You gotta
We'll keep it a secret, but I haven't even been paying attention to the Sabres.
They keep losing.
I know they
There
do.
you go. I just did your homework for you.
All right, John. Usually around Halloween, we have a Halloween question on here. What's your favorite candy? Yada, yada. What's your favorite costume? What kind of candy do you guys give out to trick-or-treaters? Do you, A, go with the good candy, B, go with candy you don't like so it's just out of there and you're not going to be tempted to chow down on it, or C, do you give the big size candy bars to your trick-or-treaters and become the house on your block that everyone looks forward to go to?
So I would love to be the big candy bar guy. If my bosses are listening, I've had this conversation with you, I think, in January. Could you give me more money so I can be the big candy bar guy? Like, I want that rep. I want the rep, and I was having this conversation with someone today because the Bills' social media team did with the iPad after practice, asking players what their favorite or what the best Halloween candy is. And so we were having the conversation. Like, it's this dynamic of I want to be known as a good Halloween house.
Mm-hmm.
I want the kids to be like, all right, when they're mapping out their route, we got to go to this house.
Right.
I want it for the decorations. My wife does a great job at buying a bunch of stuff that I end up putting up in the front yard, and got some cool stuff. The kids love it around the house. I want that, and I want them to say they give good candy. Last year, my first time giving out Halloween candy, apparently I was giving out way too much. I was like giving out a handful to each kid. Apparently you're supposed to only give like 1 or 2 pieces. What is this?
Yeah, you're supposed to hold the bowl out and tell the kids, just take one. That's how I remember it from when I was a kid. They would tell you,
well,
just take one.
Well, maybe that's the way it's supposed to go. So maybe I set a precedent that I can't uphold last year in year 1. But to answer the specific candy question, much like the beverages I purchase for a party, I get things that when inevitably there is leftovers, I still I want and like to have, because if I have stuff that I don't like that's just sitting there, I'm screwed. So, $100,000, by the way, is the answer to the what's the best Halloween candy.
Love it.
Split reviews amongst Bills players. Our boy Cam Lewis from UB, he thought I was crazy. He says they're terrible. So I told him after the game I'm bringing him a $100,000.
$100,000 for you. Signing bonus. The last question, John, before we go, and this is a la Travis Kelce and Taylor Swift, and the stat that has come out that, wouldn't you know it, Travis Kelce plays awesome when Taylor Swift is in the stands and rooting him on, over 100 yards receiving each game she's been at. It made me think of this from when I was a kid and actually played organized sports. If you liked someone, if you liked a girl, if, like with my wife now, if she's in the stands when I do my old man hockey stuff or the 11-day power play, do you play better or worse? Because for me, I always got a little goofy trying to show off to girls. I always would prefer them to laugh and joke around with me after the game. If I, in baseball, let a ball go through my legs, that would happen. If they were there watching. You know, hockey, my wife goes, every time you see me miss a one-timer in that gift that we sent out of me playing hockey, that's because my wife was there. If she's not there, I'm scoring 3 goals, automatic. So I can't do it. I'm aware that they're there all the time and would rather have them laugh with me after than say, wow, you were really impressive out there.
My wife came to a few softball games this summer.
Yeah.
She'd bring Otto, our dog. Sometimes her friends would come, and then she'd leave in the middle of the game to go hang out with them at the bar or whatever. I can't remember. I don't think I played particularly well. Sometimes I will say this. It's more of, like, if Otto's there, I feel like I need to watch him. He's such a chill dog, but whatever. I'm just like, all right, I'm just not in my usual routine. And even for just a recreational softball player, I'm a creature of habit. I have a routine to get me ready to drink a couple beers and make a couple catches and things like that. I will say one of the best games I had of the year, my parents were there. So
hey, there you go.
So I don't think it really affects me. I mean,
I always remember being a sophomore in high school. I had a crush on this girl, and you know, they had their little group, and I saw them walking to the baseball field, and I played second base back then. And my heart started racing. I couldn't stop looking over at her. I was just so distracted. But again, that's when you're in high school and you're younger and stuff. But I just remember most games where people I know are in attendance, I really crap the bed. But it's interesting, the stat there. I guess if Taylor Swift was there watching you, I guess you'd probably have to step your game up a bit.
To be fair, Travis Kelce was a future Hall of Fame tight end well before Taylor Swift entered the equation. So I know this is the thing now.
It's everywhere.
Which I'm fine with. I don't have this vitriol that some people do that Taylor Swift has infiltrated the NFL. Who cares? I think it's kind of fun.
Yeah, I don't care about it. I don't follow it. I don't care that Jackson Mahomes is in the whatever booth with
That's a
Taylor
different
Swift.
story.
All
Jackson
right.
Mahomes. But
All right, we got to get out of here. We've gone a little long. Bills coming up on Thursday, Buccaneers. It's all night games, so have a cup of coffee and stay up late for at least the next 3 games are all after 8 o'clock. For Jon, I'm Kevin. As always, thank you for joining us, everyone.